Hello, everybody. So you're here, I'm here, and we're here with the most beautiful Terri Mullen. Hello, Terri Mullen.
Hello, Katie Jolly, my wonderful friend. Thank you for having me here today.
Oh, blessed to have you. Blessed to have you. And we're going to talk midlife,
Awesome.
menopause, the barriers, the changes.
Awesome.
Yeah. So
Let's go.
Terri Mullen is on a mission to help midlife women step forward and ignite the entrepreneur within. She reinvented herself in her 50s and found her voice, which we're going to unpack the importance of
Mm,
that, of finding your voice, ladies who are listening, and the courage to launch the Redlo Woman podcast, write her best-selling book, Step Forward, and build her business, Hello Redlo. So today, through her signature Speak course and Elevate coaching, Terri empowers women to ditch self-doubt, show up with
mm.
confidence, and build an online business they love without the stress of tech overwhelm. Oh my God, that sounds amazing. And her superpower is helping women believe they can do this. And when she's not coaching, you'll find her hiking, playing pickleball, sipping coffee with a friend, spending time with her husband of 35 years. Oh my God, can we get a round of applause? Or traveling to visit her four adult children. So
Mm.
thank you, Terri. Tell tell us a little bit about yourself and your how you got here.
Thank you for that wonderful introduction, and thank you so much, first and foremost, for your friendship. You know me; I love being on the other side of the microphone, doing the interviewing. So this is fun for me. This is a stretch. First and foremost, it's so interesting when I was, sharing my bio with you. Who am I really at my core? I'm a mom of four adult children, who I'm so proud of. Like I get choked up every time I think about that. And been married 35 years. I think it all starts there. And for me, stepping into this space, I hit midlife. I grew up in an entrepreneurial family, so being an entrepreneur was not scary for me. I understood it from a brick and mortar perspective, and I was an entrepreneur in my early years. And then we had our four kids, and I stopped working when I had my third, stayed home to raise them, and then our youngest hit high school, and I was like, who am I now?
Wow.
Am I now that I've raised these four children? What's next? I was still young enough, and I realized I'd kind of shelved some of my dreams, really to support my husband, whose career had just skyrocketed. And it was at that point that I feel like, okay, I got to figure out what's next. Am I even qualified to do something next? The kids are going to be gone. It's just going to be Scott and I looking at each other, and I need more from me. And we had gone through kind of some really hard things, and I felt like it was time for me to kind of find my own voice and really express what I needed now going forward. And it was at that point that I launched the podcast. That's kind of where I started. And I thought if I can just help one wonderful woman on the other side of this podcast and inspire them and help them believe in themselves, then I have achieved my goal. And from there, like it went on, that's when I wrote the book and then launched now helping women as a coach. So that's kind of where it all began. It's not been easy.
What were the hard things? Was it the empty nest syndrome that kicked in?
For sure. I still get choked up. Our kids live across the US. We sent them away to college, and now we ask ourselves, why did we send them away so far? Um, I was all in on being a mom. I look back and I wouldn't have done it any differently. We have just four great children, and two are married, and I'm so proud of that. But that transition was huge for me. And I don't think we talk about it enough because, there's the books on what to expect when you're expecting and the terrible twos and the tween years and the teen years. And then people kind of stop talking about what happens when your kids go away to college and what happens when it's just you and your husband again. It's a huge, huge, huge life transition. And it was huge for me. It might not be for everybody, but for me, it was a really big transition
Mm.
because now you're kind of faced with looking at yourself again, like, okay, who am I? And
Mm.
who's your marriage changes. It's a different season, decade, and you've kind of got to go back to like it was when it was just the two of you again.
In
And
what
there's a
way does
lot
it
of learning.
change? In what way does it change?
I think it changes in the way you communicate, in the way you spend time together. When you're busy raising your kids, you've got so many distractions. And Scott and I always did like our date night. You'll see me post a lot about date night
Mm.
because we always did date night along the way when our kids were young. We were very intentional about that. And thank goodness because it kept us connected. And we still do it now because we're both building these businesses separately. I say we have a blended business marriage.
Mm.
I have my business, he has his, and we have ours. And so it's been a journey to really learn how to communicate again,
Mm.
and put each other first, and find those things that brought us together originally, because it's easy. I think a lot of marriages break apart come midlife,
Mm.
It's easy to lose yourself
Mm.
in that, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it does. I was on a call yesterday with Tanner Amen with the Amen
Oh,
University, and it's
yeah,
really interesting. The clinical research shows that during menopause, the testosterone doesn't raise, but it becomes higher, and women instigate more divorce during menopause than men.
interesting.
But I think it's part of what you're talking about. I think that as women, for me, even now, I'm in perimenopause, but
Yeah,
we put so much of our energy into our children. And then
right,
when they're gone, like when you're talking about this empty nest syndrome, it's like, who am I?
right.
Who am I? Because it's been years and years of you not being first.
Absolutely. And that's really what happened to me. It really did happen to me. I'm like, who am I now? It's been a long time. And I had to kind of go on this mission and figure out who am I? Tried on all the different shoes. It's what I partly write about in my book and went on this self-discovery journey and figured out what fit, you know?
Yeah. So what did
Unfortunately,
you
my husband
do?
was,
What sort of things did you do?
I decided that I wanted to get my real estate license. So I did that.
Wow.
Yeah. I kind of started saying yes to all the things that just piqued my curiosity. I really leaned into curiosity. I decided to run a half marathon. I was going on a hike with a friend that we had moved back to California, and I went running up this hill one time and she said, "Hey, would you ever be interested in doing a half marathon?" I'm like, "Sure." And so that was huge fun. That was super fun. I did that, started playing tennis, started riding horses, doing dressage, just started trying all these different things. And through that journey, we went through a really hard financial time.
Mm,
And so that was kind of another big pivot in our life. And it really forced me into going back to work and then really figuring out, okay, really, what is it that I want to do with my life from here on out?
mm,
And
mm,
so that became another huge turning point as well.
Was there
So
was there a moment, because I know that I've had it, I'm a few years off 50, and what was there a moment when you thought, I've got limited time left to do what I want to do with my life, or not?
back then, I don't think so. That
Okay.
that really wasn't my motivation. It was more or less out of excitement and what's next for me.
Wow.
It was more that. It was more leaning into kind of in wide open space.
Mm,
What's next? I still I go back to that feeling of it wasn't a negative thought. It was excitement that there's still a lot of life ahead, and what do I want to do?
mm,
It was
mm.
more that.
So
Yeah.
what was the inspiration for writing your book? Is how old were you when you wrote it?
I was 58. I published
Wow.
intentionally on my 59th birthday.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah,
Wow.
that's and I know you and I have that in common that's something to this day I am just so proud of.
Mm,
Always wanted to write a book. I actually say I have more in me. I didn't write my first book. I didn't write, it's not my last book. And I wrote a book a little bit differently than I thought I would. I took a course and it kind of unfolded as I wrote it
mm,
and just decided I had this whole idea. Got these metaphors. I talk about 10 different shoes. And, I've got such a creative side. So there were 10 different shoes that I needed to step into in order to step forward with my life, both
mm,
through the hard things and then the good things, to feel that confidence, to take that courageous step forward. And then ultimately, I end up with the ruby slipper, believing that I have a brain in my head, I have a really big heart, and I have the courage to move forward. And it was, and then to go take that and radiate that out into the world and make a difference, you know?
Mm,
Now, what legacy am I leaving? What impact am I going to have on others and
mm.
my girls, you know? What example am I going to be to them?
Yeah.
So, just,
What are the
yeah.
10 shoes, Terry? Tell us about
Oh,
the
God,
10
I gotta,
shoes.
hold on one second. I should know them all by heart. One of them, I talk about the battle boots. Then I talk about the courageous cowboy boot. That's my
Okay,
favorite.
Unpack them for us. What are the battle boots?
Okay. The battle boots are the boots that have to step into as you wade through the muck of your life.
Mm,
Those things that you've got to trample over and get beyond, the limiting beliefs, those doubts and fears and things that rise up and hold you back. So that's what that is. And face yourself.
mm,
The courageous cowboy boots. So that's stepping into that courage and believing that you can do it,
mm,
even when you're afraid, and to keep moving forward and to take a pause and to look at those moments in your life where you have done courageous things. I've done a lot of crazy things, just like you have, like jumping out of the plane, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I think we often forget the courageous things we've done. And I think it's so important to pause and take a look at it because we forget who we are and what we've already done. So that's one of my favorite shoes. I talk about the tenacious tennis shoes, that's stepping forward and having tenacity. For me, you know, as I've shared with you, crossing the finish line, running a marathon, it's all about keeping forward. It's 1 mile at a time. You just keep going 1 mile at a time and celebrating it, not quitting. I also talk a little bit about giving yourself permission to quit. There's things I've quit in my life, like not finishing college.
Mm,
And it was really hard on myself for a long time, but now I realize it's all okay, you know?
mm.
Faith, I have the faithful flats, you
Yeah.
know, having faith in God and faith in yourself, faith to move forward and trust the journey. Fun and flexible flip flop. For me, this is hard. You know, I'm pretty serious. A lot of times I'm very driven. I always keep moving forward. And so that one's just giving yourself permission to have some fun, to pivot, to change when you need, and not be hard on yourself. I have the resilient rain boot to rise up from hard things,
Mm,
let things kind of wash over you, not worry as much about what other people think. And I give tools, you know, for all of these
mm.
steps. I actually have one called the energetic espadrille.
Yeah.
Why having energy matters. I have the self care slippers, and then I have the radiant ruby slipper.
That's awesome. That is so cool.
So,
So
isn't that
cool.
funny? It's so funny how that came to me. And I went back to work at Nordstrom, and one of the busiest department in any store is women's shoes. And
Mm,
so it always just intrigued me, you know, just to think about the shoes that we step into as women,
mm.
and those
And there's
shoes that,
so many, Terry, isn't there? So
yeah.
many
Oh,
shoes.
yeah, I forgot about the high heel. Hello, Redlo high heel. Forgot about
Yeah.
that one. Yeah,
Can't
there
forget that
are, right?
one.
There are. Got to get one more. Anyway, yeah.
Yeah.
So
So
that's that.
do you think that for women that are moving into midlife, like this catalyst because the children leaving was a massive gap for you, do you think that this is where a lot of women actually get stuck? Because they haven't pursued their dreams, they haven't. What do you
I
think?
want to. I want to say yes and no. I
Yeah.
think that was my experience, but I also think there are women that are in a career pivot that
Mm,
life is full of transitions, and that's part of what the book is. I say how to navigate midlife transitions. I think it's both. I think it's just one of the major life transitions that we experience. I don't think all women experience it the way I did. I think if you're a full-time mom, then trying to step back into something else, it's
mm,
hard. But I just think it's just a variation of that season of life and that life
mm,
transition that I just wish we would talk about it more. You know, that's why I love listening to like Maria Shriver. You know, she talks a lot about that, you know,
mm,
this midlife and reinventing ourselves and navigating that season of life.
mm.
Um,
Because it was
so
interesting, the call that I was on yesterday, and I've popped it into the notes so that I can read it to you. Because when I knew I
yeah.
was seeing you, and then I saw the call yesterday, I was like, oh my God, this so fits. So what Tanner was talking about are there are stages of neural pruning. that happen
Mm.
for women and more stages of neural pruning because we go through these major hormonal shifts through our life.
Yeah.
So what happens is the decrease in estrogen leads to changes in cognitive function with brain fog and memory lapses. But this is what came off ChatGPT, is that
Okay.
hormonal fluctuations also lead to reorganization of neural networks, right? So we're changing it up with pruning occurring in areas related to emotional regulation, memory, and learning. So when I learned this, I was like, oh my God, it's like pruning the dead heads off the roses. For women
Mm.
that are moving into midlife, like this is actually our time,
Right. It really is.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. That's so beautiful. And I think along with that, correct me if I'm wrong, but
Mm.
along with that is removing things that aren't important as much anymore. It's learning like setting boundaries, really leaning into, and like what I say with Redlo, like owning who you are, right?
Mm, mm,
And really worrying less about what other people think, the people pleasing, that need for approval. We've kind of arrived at this season of life, and I've heard a lot of people like, "Screw it, this is who I am now,"
yeah,
right? And
yeah,
almost that sense of freedom. So, does that align? Does that make
yeah, yeah,
sense?
yeah, yeah. So for our listeners, unpack Redlo for us.
Okay. Redlo came to me. Look at me smile. I get so excited to talk about it. It's kind of a whole story, but Redlo came to me actually in the middle of the night, and I woke up and wrote it all down. Is actually older spelled backwards, and I say if Oprah can have Harpo, I can have Redlo. um, and I say it's not. We're not going back. We're actually reclaiming who we are and moving forward, and it's just leaning into that and owning it. It's a fun name. It's kind of an empowerment. It's that sense of belonging. It's kind of a movement.
Mm,
I've given it an acronym. Redlo is actually a persona. I've given her a persona. And it actually means to reclaim your confidence. It's my mission, what I want to
mm,
help women with. So reclaim your confidence, embrace your voice, define your path, lead with courage, and own your space.
beautiful.
And thank you. It's just that sense of empowerment and really helping women believe in who they are and how amazing they are
Mm,
at this season of life and all that they've been through to get here, It's really interesting. There's a study that was done. Two women, what are their names? I wrote this down because I was Dr. Suzanne Imes and Dr. Pauline Clance. They're
mm,
two psychiatrists that back in 1978, they coined the phrase imposter syndrome. It was originally originated imposter phenomenon
mm.
because what they found, they were doing this study that so many women, very accomplished women, got to, this season of life, and many of them doubted and questioned who they are. They didn't believe that they were really qualified.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah. And so for me, I've really just wrapped my head around that, that's a real struggle. That's kind of
Mm,
where all that came from. And many of us, especially women, men do it too, but I think women do it so much more.
mm,
And, especially in this season of life, no matter what we've
mm.
accomplished, we kind of look back and don't feel like we're really qualified.
And it's
So,
interesting, I think, because of the media, and I
mm,
had this conversation about someone I know who she's in her 60s and, like she's still trying to look 20,
mm,
still trying to look 20. And I didn't have the conversation with her because it would be confrontational. But I'm
yeah.
like, we can never be that again. And can we just celebrate? Can we celebrate youth for the young,
Mm,
but also celebrate our beauty as older women, the wisdom, like being able to
oh,
celebrate where we are when the media just portrays women on TV and in magazines as that they're all 20 something,
right,
and it
right.
reminds me, Terry, when I was in the acting industry, um, I was 28, I think, at the time, and got an audition for a television show, and they were like, "Oh, you're going to be playing a mum of teenage children." Because at 28 and
Wow.
I looked younger as well, but that was going to be the role.
Wow. For a 28-year-old.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Wow.
So you get this,
Yeah.
the subset of I think for women is that we're as older women, it's not that we're not celebrated, but I think we need to celebrate ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah. I completely agree with you. And I think I feel sorry for women that are in Hollywood that have to feel like they have to keep up with all of that, you know?
Mm.
And I think Jane Fonda's done kind of a fun job kind of explaining that, although she's had a lot of work done, you know. But and Jamie Lee Curtis too.
Mm.
I think it would be so hard to be in Hollywood, but I agree. I think there's this need to just celebrate age and aging gracefully and
Mm.
being all that we are and not trying to. I have no desire to try to look 20 again. I don't want to be in my 20s again. I would never want to go back to that. I'm grateful for. I've earned my lines, you know.
Yeah.
I've earned my lines and my stretch marks. So it comes. Those scars come with wonderful blessings, and I always want to stay fit and try to look my best. But I celebrate my age. I really do. So that's a beautiful statement, Katie. I agree with you.
Mm.
You know, and I
So,
think our culture. I don't know about you all, but you know, our culture here. You know, and those, like you said, in Hollywood, that's really what they do. But I don't know about other cultures, like the Japanese culture. Like there are cultures where people really honor aging.
mm,
We just don't do such a great job here in the US, you
mm.
know?
I think it's everywhere. I think that there's just such a shift from honoring our elders,
Mm,
and the wisdom that
yeah.
comes from that. And I think that is, a very brash statement, but I think that that's part of the breakdown in society because you don't
Mm,
have people are looking
yep.
to Instagram and YouTube to teach them how to cook pie, rather than going to their grandmother or their
Mm.
mother or, little things like that. The knowledge that
You,
gets passed down because you've earned it and you've walked the path.
you are absolutely spot on. So true. And what's going to happen with that generation, you know, as AI continues to roll out and it's
Mm,
really, really powerful statement. It's so true. And I had such a close relationship with my grandparents, my maternal grandparents. And so they had such a big role in my life. And I'm just so grateful for that, you know, the things I learned from them.
mm,
But that's a really insightful, you know. They go to YouTube and Instagram
mm,
now.
mm, mm,
So
mm,
powerful. Love that.
mm.
Love it.
So for you, you talk a lot about finding your voice.
Hmm.
What's the motivation behind that for you? What's the journey been? Because it is a really powerful mission for women.
Thank you.
Mm,
That's been my journey, honestly. Finding my voice as I wrote my book, finding my voice as I started the podcast, willingness to be vulnerable, share who I am. Um, Grew up with a very, very strong mom, you know, didn't always feel heard. You know, you will hear me say on my podcast, you
mm,
are seen, you are heard, you are loved, you are valued, and you belong. Always told just to be quiet. Oh, stop. Why do you need to make an issue of that? That happened a lot. I'm married to someone who's very, very strong.
mm,
Felt like I lost my voice somewhere along the way in our marriage when my husband decided he wanted to move back to California. I share this very openly. It's the opening story in my book that
mm,
walking up the driveway after we sold our dream home, you know, he didn't hear what I had to say. It wasn't that I didn't want to move back to California. It just wasn't at that time.
mm,
And I'd made a decision at that time, after we'd had this really big long argument, that it's time for me to be heard.
mm,
And so that's where our growth has come. It's my growth personally and our growth in our marriage too. I thought we had great communication until I realized we didn't.
mm,
And that's where I say, like with the kids, raising the kids, and Scott became very, very successful. And with that came his ego.
mm,
And so there was a breakdown of our communication, and it's taken a lot to get back to that. And so
mm,
for me, that's really where I have really leaned into helping women find their voice. It's self respect, it's really owning who you are, speaking your truth,
mm,
saying no, you know, and not ever like not out of like anger and you know, not being manipulative. It's out of
mm,
truth and authenticity, if that
mm,
makes sense.
mm. What
Yeah.
tools have you used to develop that in yourself?
School of Hard Knocks.
Yeah.
um, but truly, I think for me, it's letting go of that people pleasing. It's constant growth, right? It's constant learning about myself. I heard Jenna Kutcher, and I'm going to come back to this. I'm not
Mm.
deviating, but Jenna Kutcher said something really, really powerful on her podcast recently, and it applies because I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so me. Being an entrepreneur reveals all the areas of your life where you need healing.
Yeah.
Um, right? Like writing a book, you
Yeah.
feel really exposed and you find out where your own ego needs work, right? Um, so for me, it was really going deep and finding out who I really am. What is it that I want? Not what I think everybody else wants. I
Mm.
spent a lifetime pleasing everybody else and really tuning into my own voice. That what is it? I tell this really dumb story that I was sitting in a restaurant with a group of our friends, and it was the first time that I didn't ask everybody else what they wanted to eat. I looked down at my menu and said, I want this. I know that
Wow.
sounds dumb, but
No, no,
as a
not at
woman,
all.
right? You know, as a
Yeah.
woman, we do this. And finally, I was like, huh, I want this. And I didn't even ask anybody.
Mm.
So it's little things like those little baby steps. My mother-in-law used to have me write no on a post-it and stick it next to my phone because yes flew out of my mouth faster than I could even think. Sure, sure, sure. And I pissed her off enough times and booked myself so tight that she was like, okay, you are writing a post-it note that says no.
Yeah.
I can't do this. um, but those are really my top things. It's just really the small steps. It's really honoring your voice, really getting clear on what you want and
Mm.
tuning out the other noises and really learning to say no and set some boundaries.
Mm.
Yeah.
What are some of the patterns from the women that you've worked with? What are some of the patterns you've seen with their disbelief in themselves or the people pleasing? What are the patterns you've seen, Terry?
I, first and foremost, I think the pleasing is huge. And then I see a lack of confidence.
Mm.
I think that really comes up believing that they're qualified,
Mm.
much like what we're talking about. Um, yeah, I think, and that need for approval rather
Mm.
than really standing on their own and believing that they are qualified and capable and can move forward and do it on their own. I think those are probably the three biggest things. Does,
Mm.
does
Mm.
that answer your question?
Yeah,
I think
yeah,
that's
yeah,
the
yeah.
pattern. Yeah. It's interesting because we all have it. We all have our limiting beliefs. And I think the difference, I just heard Sarah Blakely talk about this. Like it never really goes away,
Mm.
right? You've probably seen the video of her like in the helicopter and she's freaking out. She's like, take me back, give me tequila. Why do my friends tell me to take some tequila with me? Um, and it's like that. We all have it. We just learn how to navigate it, I think. I think leaning in and realizing it's there, the doubt's there. Doubt's huge for me.
Mm.
Um, and realizing it's there and like, hey, I see you, but I'm not going to give into it.
Mm.
I'm familiar with you now, and I'm going to keep moving forward,
Mm.
if that makes any
Yeah,
sense.
yeah, yeah. So, writing your book and then doing your podcast,
Yeah.
what have some of the lessons been for you on this entrepreneurial journey, moving into coaching, going on social media? What of those, when you talk about the school of hard knocks, right? What are some of the
Yeah.
lessons you've learned along the way?
Um, find the helpers.
Mm.
I think getting a one-on-one coach, someone that's ahead of you, further ahead than you are. Don't try to go it alone. It's a big, wide, messy world out there. I think social media, I think being online and in the online space is a whole different animal. Like even for me, coming from an entrepreneurial background, it was brick and mortar.
Mm.
Moving to online is a whole new world. And it's a whole new world today with AI and all that's going on, right?
Mm.
So I think group coaching is great, but I think at some point you need to really invest in yourself and get a coach one on one. That
Mm.
person that's really interested in you can help you get further, faster where you need to go. The second thing is you just got to dive in and do it. We
Mm.
can swirl in that self doubt and be so afraid. And I think that's where you just got to dive in and do it messy and not worry about what other people think. You got to believe in yourself and your vision
Mm.
and what it is that you want to help. I think we have to put on the blinders, not look left or right.
Mm,
For those of us that are recovering people pleasers, we're always looking for that approval, that opinion of somebody else. And sometimes the minute somebody says, "Oh, that's not a good idea," you're like, "Oh, right, right, right," and we
mm,
question ourselves. I did that with the podcast. I shifted and changed the name. And then I'm like, what am I doing? Like
mm,
Trent Shelton says, put on your glasses. It's your vision. No one else has the vision but you. And
mm,
you have to believe in it enough to keep moving forward and block out those voices and the noise of other people. And it's hard. That's hard to do.
mm,
And the other thing, I think, it's harder than people tell us it's going to be.
mm,
There's so many coaches out there that tell, oh, you can make $10,000 in your first month. Run from that. It's hard. Anything worth that we do in life is hard. And
mm,
I think we need to speak to that more. It's worth it. As we were talking before on the call, before we got on here, there's a lot of hurting people.
mm,
And that is the part where I think whatever your passion is, whatever your life experiences is that you've gotten on the other side of, there's room for you to help somebody to make a difference. And I think to focus on that rather than the
mm,
outcome and keep moving forward. Don't quit when it gets hard. Find people to lift you up. Find a community like we have. Find the friends like you and I have, the people that can say, keep going. Don't quit. Don't jump off. You're close. Keep going.
mm. Because I think it's really
um,
interesting from the Blue Zone nations, and those are the people
mm,
that live the longest on Earth.
yeah.
One of the key factors they identified with all of the people was a sense of purpose, a
Mm,
reason to get up in the morning. And if you
mm,
think, I know I keep coming back to this empty nest syndrome, but I know for me, 70% of my life is my children.
right.
And then my business and everything else is in the cracks. So
Right.
to be in this point of the children are gone, it's like, what is my function? What is my purpose now? And we
Mm,
need to actually find it. We need to create it because the world, I was saying this to one of my clients who's an older lady. I said, it's not like in your 20s that someone's going to see you and say, oh my gosh, you've got so much talent. Come and take this opportunity.
spot on.
We have, as women and men as well, when we get to that midlife stage, we have to create it. It's the time to follow our dreams.
You are absolutely spot on. And I think I've said that, before, that I think our purpose, that sense of purpose matters more now than ever
Yeah.
because, it's true. That's what gets you up out of bed every day is that sense of purpose that you're making a difference, whatever that is for you, whether you're volunteering
Mm,
or you're doing a business or you're writing a book or doing whatever it is or doing a podcast, that sense of purpose and adding value to somebody else is huge. And you're right. I think there's a lot of data on that. It's
mm,
spot on, Katie. Yeah, I believe in that with everything in me. I think it matters more than anything. And when I interviewed my friend Heather, who talks a lot about menopause as well, she was saying that the postmenopausal part of our life is the biggest part of our life.
wow.
Isn't that interesting? And we
Yeah.
don't talk about it enough, and that's why it's so important to regulate our emotions like you're talking about. Everybody needs you,
Yeah.
That's why we need to
Yeah.
regulate and be aware of our mental health and our hormones and how we're taking care of our bodies, we're
Mm.
living longer. So yeah, totally agree.
And it's interesting, Terry, just going back to that sense of purpose, is that we go into the stage of life, right?
Hmm.
And if we look at the way that the TV is or the media is, once you get past a certain point, you're shelved, right?
Right,
So for
right.
people to actually feel what is my purpose, and the people that I've seen that are in midlife and they're happy are the ones that are actually giving back in some way.
Yeah.
Like I think we go through, like you've been through all the hard stuff. You've been in the
Hmm.
school of hard knocks. You've got
Yeah.
the knowledge, you've got the wisdom, right? And
Mm.
then, okay,
Yeah.
how can I serve and give back?
Right. Yeah. Spot on. How can I make a difference? It's so true. It's really interesting as you're talking. One of the things that popped in my head is my grandfather, he who had a restaurant. He didn't have more than an eighth grade education. He was just
Mm,
a brilliant man. And he didn't stop working. He sold his restaurant, and I think when he was 90.
Yeah.
And I said to him, why are you working? You know? He's like, what else am I going to do? This brings me joy. I get to serve people. It makes me happy to walk into the restaurant and know that I'm making people feel good. I'm making them happy and they walk in and people, half the people want to just come and say hi to Barney, you know?
Yeah.
So it's exactly what you're saying. He's like, what else would I do? My grandmother had passed away. It fulfilled him. It gave him that sense of purpose of waking up every single day. And
Mm,
that's for me. That's been what drives me, you know? If he could do it, so can I, you know?
mm,
So
mm, mm,
yeah, I really love that, Katie. It's true.
mm. For you,
Yeah.
Terry, uh, what do you think are the advantages of being a midlife woman? I don't think that's the right England. A female entrepreneur at this stage of your life. What are the advantages?
I think it's kind of everything. It's so much fun. It does give me that sense of purpose. I know I'm making a difference in somebody's life. I was thinking, when I was thinking about this, I'm like, if I could sit down with someone that's been gone ahead of me, who would I want to sit down and talk to? I'd want to talk to Maria Shriver. I'd want to
Yeah.
talk to Jamie Kern Lima. I'd want to talk to, I wrote down, I don't know if you know Jen Hatmaker, but she's been through really hard things. These women that have reinvented themselves and
Mm,
really honor their age and where they've been. And it's motivating, it's inspiring. I think it gives us hope and possibility for life,
mm,
for what's ahead. And, even for someone like you that has young kids and you think, okay, when I become an empty nester, look what's possible,
yeah.
You can travel with your husband if you want, or you can continue to do this part time, or you can, you know what I mean? Like, it just gives you that possibility to keep living and doing something for yourself. And I think it's fun to see that women, midlife women, are the largest age demographic that are starting entrepreneurial businesses. And so it's just
Wow.
kind of yeah, it's super fun to see that. And I don't know, it just feels like it's exciting. It's hard, but it's really exciting. And I think, like, much like what you were saying, kind of going back to, I think women have so much to offer. Women that are midlife, that have experienced so much in their life. They've had this failure. They've probably had the success along with it. They've had failed marriages. They've had hard things, tragedy, hard things that have happened in their life. And they can bring a lot of that to the table.
Mm,
So,
mm, mm. And I think
yeah.
we were talking about it before it started, is actually bringing that feminine energy
Mm,
into the space because so much of what, especially as entrepreneurs, it's very masculine, it's very much pushing, crushing whoever you can, going
yep.
hard after the dollar. It's really interesting as a woman. What
Right.
are your thoughts on this?
I agree with you 100%. And I live with someone who has very large male energy. And
Mm,
so it becomes a battle sometimes. And sometimes I need that push a little bit, but I also need to lean into the feminine. And I agree with you spot on. I think we need more women. That's why we need our community. We
mm,
need, and Jenna Kutcher does a really good job talking about this. We need that community of women to really support each other because it's completely different. And she talks
mm.
about that,
Mm,
our own doubts and things that we experience are very different than men. And there's data on that too. So, yeah, I think very much that
mm,
there's a need for feminine energy. Just a side note, I was, as you know, I did kind of the Brendan Burchard Growth Day LA
mm,
all last year with my husband. And there was one particular event we were at where I sat there and he had there was so much male energy on the stage. You had Ed
mm,
Milet, you had Brendan, you had Trent Shelton, and Anthony Trucks. Lots of masculine football, rah, rah,
mm,
rah, energy. And there was only one woman, and he does a pretty good job having
mm,
women speak usually, but on this particular day, he didn't. He just had one woman kind of walk people through this particular exercise. And I walked out there and said to Scott, okay, this is the only one I've been to where I was annoyed that it was so
mm,
masculine. And I felt that. And I said, God, I want to be that woman on the stage one day, like motivating other women because
mm.
we need it.
Yeah.
It's a different energy to speak to women in this space. It really is.
Mm,
So I
mm,
totally, yeah,
And I
agree with
think
you.
that as women, we forget, especially those of us who are mothers, right? We
Mhm.
forget the resilience we have. We
Yes.
we look at if we park all the people pleasing and we go, actually, I've changed thousands of nappies. I've cleaned vomit up off the floor. I've functioned without any sleep. I've had my shower last for how many years, or I've eaten last.
Yeah.
Like all the things that we go through, they build an entrepreneur, don't they?
Spot for sure. Woohoo! Let's just celebrate that. It's so true.
Yeah.
I'm I'm laughing because one of the topics in my book I talk about writing the resume, and I remember calling, my cousin, I'm like, okay, who am I? And then I realized, look who I was the CEO of my home. Look what I was
Yeah.
managing. Look what I had done. We wear all the hats. Just like you said, we're amazing. Women are amazing. And we're not either or, we're an and, we're a combination of all these wonderful things. And I think that's so important, even as an entrepreneur. And Marie Forleo talks about this, embracing all that we are, be multi passionate, embrace it. We're not just one thing, we're a masterpiece of so much. And it's a gift, it's not a negative,
Mm.
we're not black and
Isn't it
white.
interesting just chatting? I've got some clients who are older women that don't have children. Either they
Hmm.
couldn't have them or it was by choice. And then they've got another layer at that age of moving through
Mm.
menopause, of, who am I in this world when it only values younger women? They've got another
Ah,
level because they haven't got children, they haven't got grandchildren. It's
yeah,
really interesting. And to be able to
yeah.
use what you said earlier, Terry, to get some curiosity about life and think, well, God,
Mm.
what's possible? I am on
Right,
my own, so I don't have any restraints.
right, right. Yeah, I'm just processing that because that is a whole other layer and a whole different aspect of it. Women that have not had children. And
Yeah.
yeah, that's a whole different thing. But true, leaning
Mm,
into that curiosity, it's necessary and purpose,
mm,
you
mm,
know,
mm.
that
So,
next purpose. What's next for you?
for women who are in midlife, I'm reading
Yeah.
one of my questions now, Terry.
Oh, you are. Okay. We went so far off topic here, but it's been so good.
Um, so for women that are in midlife feeling it may be too late to start something new,
Mhm.
what message would you have for them?
I'd say it's absolutely not too late. Just look around, look at the data that I shared earlier. And I would say, like what we talked about, get curious, lean into that,
Mm,
into what's holding you back. What stories are you telling yourself? Because all you have to do is just take a pause and look around at the women that are doing these things, even, more well known people, like I shared earlier, and lean into that. And I think that's just fear that's holding us back because it's not truth. The
mm,
truth is women are moving forward. Women are, stepping into this space, and I'd encourage you to find them. I'm here. I'm one of them. Go find those. Have conversations with women, and find out what they're doing, what it took to get to where they are now. Because listen to the podcast, listen to my podcast too. Talk about. I love interviewing women that have overcome hard things and started again midlife. And sometimes you just got to close your eyes and jump and do it and go for it, and
mm,
not worry what other people think. You
mm.
know.
Because you're one thing that I do admire about you, Terry, is that you're really good with technology.
Oh, thanks.
What? I mean, you didn't have that background before. Like, is it that curiosity that has kept you up to date with all the latest tech?
Yeah, for sure. And I was someone who was, I'll never forget my daughter texting us and saying, "Hey, there's this thing out called ChatGPT." And it started, with all the writing. I'm like, I'm not looking at that. That's ridiculous. I'm a writer. Who's going to use that? I mean, I wrote my whole book without ChatGPT, right? So I'm not doing that. I had a snooty fluty attitude about it. And now I'm really on board with it because I make so many freaking typos. If anybody is ever worried about being perfect, just follow me. Look at for all my typos because they're there. So I do use it for that. And I think technology is just a huge asset.
Mm,
It's not something to be afraid of. I think many women, that's the other thing. I see midlife women going into this being so afraid of technology. We hear AI, we think of the Jetsons. It's moving, it's going, it's not stopping. And
mm,
I just had this amazing interview with a woman, my podcast interview will air this week, who's really into AI, and she was doing STEM and getting her degree in computer technology before it was even cool, right?
Wow.
And super cool. And so I listen to women like that, and I'm like, okay, this we can do this. And then if you get afraid, find somebody that can help you. You
Mm,
know, there are tools that are available now. There's so many plug and play things that make it easy, and it's there to help you, not to get you stressed out, you know,
mm.
and have fun with it. It's That's the thing, is make it fun and also keep it simple. You know, we can overwhelm ourselves. So, yeah, that's been kind of a surprise and delight for myself. You know, I love kind of the nerdy backside of it. I'm not coding or anything like that. I'm not
Yeah.
that savvy.
No, but you
I'm not
know
that
how to use
good.
like Canva and CapCut and all, I mean, all the tools that for an
Yeah.
entrepreneur wanting to go onto social media, you've mastered
Yeah.
all that stuff.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think
I
you're
love it.
amazing.
Oh, well, I think you're amazing. So
Oh,
you're good
thanks.
at it too. You're
Mutual
good at it too.
Appreciation Society. No, I'm really not. It's an illusion. But one
Some days
thing
I feel
that
like that.
before we close, we'll start coming to
Yeah.
the end. But when I had my second child, the midwife that was there was doing her master's thesis on the history of childbearing and the raising of children. And what
Hmm.
she found is that historically in communities, the mother had a minimum of 10 women around her,
Wow.
right? A minimum
Wow.
of 10 women around her supporting her to raise that child.
Mhm.
And I
Wow.
think that for both of us, we've started on the online journey, being an entrepreneur, it is so lonely,
For sure.
and what women can go through as midlife women can be so lonely and so scary is like what you're saying, find like-minded people because they become your tribe of 10.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. I love that so much. We had a small earthquake here the other day. You know, normally I don't get freaked out, but this one, I'm like, oh my gosh. And you've probably seen the video. There's a video that went viral of the elephants, the adult elephants that surrounded, they made a circle around the baby elephant to protect
Wow.
it. And it made, I mean, I had that visual as you're talking. I'm like, that's really what's missing. You
Yeah.
know, we need that community that comes together. Like there used to be knitting circles, right? Or
Mm,
quilting circles or whatever it was. And it's so true. I think that's my other takeaway from this journey is
mm,
find your tribe, find women. You're not in competition with them. They're there to help you and lean on them. Those women that are taking the same path with you. You know,
mm,
that's why I'm so grateful for our friendship. You know,
mm.
it does get very, very lonely and you need that support. Totally agree.
Because there
Yeah.
was, we could talk for hours, but there,
I know.
there was a study, and I can't remember if I saw it through Dr. Amen or it might have been somewhere else, but it was about a village in Africa,
Mm,
and they didn't have electricity, they didn't have power, and the women used to go and wash the clothes at the river. And it was part of the daily sabbatical, or no, that's not the right word, ablution, the
mm,
daily ritual to go and wash the clothes, and the women would talk and they would cry and they would sing together. But then when the community got power and they got washing machines, the mental health rates skyrocketed.
wow.
And that is a true study. That's a true study. So it just shows you the power of that community. And I think as
Mm,
women, as midlife women, as you're, the people you're serving, having that
right.
sense of community, whatever you're doing.
Right. Absolutely. I mean, that makes me just pause. You know, it's really powerful. And I think at the rate we're moving, we've got to work really hard at making these human connections. And you and I have talked about that so much.
Mm,
We need it. That's never going to go out of style. You know, we need it. So
mm,
to even compare that now, like you said, once the electricity came on, you know, what's going to happen now with all this AI and um, something to really pause and think about.
mm,
So that for me, honestly, Katie, and is just thinking about how then do I help that generation behind me, or how do I really connect with women one to one in person and
mm.
really help move them forward? I think there's going to be a stronger need for it.
Yeah.
So I'm grateful for you and what you're doing. You have such an incredible community. You have brought so many people together with your journey, with your life story, with what you're doing, with writing your book. It's beautiful, and it comes from such a genuine place. It's been a gift to meet you along this path. Really has.
Likewise, Terri Mullen. Thank you so
Well,
much for
thank
your
you.
time. So, if you can, we'll pop your book into the show notes, your podcast, your
Yep.
community that you have created on Facebook. So,
Yep.
if people want to connect with you and learn how to get some new shoes in midlife, get some high heels happening.
Absolutely. And lean into finding their voice. I have a course coming up, so I'll share all that with you. Yeah, I'd love to. I'm here to help women step forward.
Yeah,
Yeah.
beautiful. Thank you so
Thank
much,
you.
Terri.
My
God
pleasure.
bless.
God bless.